Hey, it's Darcy McConvey, and this is the Venture and Gains podcast. The purpose of the show is to connect people to other great people, ideas, and opportunities. Everyone has less than a handful of people in their network where it seems like there's something different about them. Everything they touch seems to turn to gold, and they're those can't-miss people, and you just know it. These are the podcast guests. We catch them at various stages of their career, learn from how they think, so you can connect the dots and apply it. Most importantly, we all want to meet more of these people, and we'll work to connect you. In this episode, former NHL player Kevin Bieksa breaks down how he gained a physical and mental edge over his competition on and off the ice, the challenges athletes face post-retirement, and how he's able to successfully transition from hockey player to media personality and youth mentor. Kevin played pro hockey for 15 years, 13 of which were in the NHL with the Vancouver Canucks and the Anaheim Ducks. Currently, he's the director of elite defenseman mentorship at KO Sports, as well as a broadcaster and analyst for Sportsnet and Hockey Night in Canada. Back at it with the legendary Kevin Bieksa. Kevin, welcome to the Venture and Gains podcast. Great to have you.
It's an aggressive intro. I wouldn't say legendary, but you're welcome for being here.
Yeah, fair enough on the legendary. You're probably right there. Just to kick it off, I'm going to, it's kind of been on my mind a little bit, is do you still get Nick Lachey comparisons?
No, I'm more like Tom Brady now.
More like,
it's evolved.
Is that look or just like presence?
Everything. Look, presence, wife.
Life. Got it. Life
and
wife.
Wife, total package.
I was wondering if, like, where is Nick Lachey these days? Maybe he's getting, hey, Nick, you look like a guy like Kevin Bieksa.
You look like that Sportsnet guy that just talks all the time and makes stuff up.
Yeah.
That's probably exactly what he gets.
Well, to jump into something a little more serious, you know, we've kind of been back, you know, I've known you for quite a while. You know, you've definitely got a unique personality and you're a super competitive guy. So, like, where does that edge that you bring to kind of everything you do in that, you know, competitive nature, where do you think that comes from?
I think it's innate. I think it comes from my childhood, and honestly, like it's very simple, but I think it comes from having two brothers and being the middle child. That's kind of the origins of it, and a competitive dad and an athletic dad when I was a kid, and just playing little games around our house and outside. You just never want to lose. You never want to be the one that loses in the games with your brothers. And we played everything as kids. We played outside, baseball, football, street hockey, everything. And wrestling. We're a big wrestling family too. So we used to wrestle each other and just never wanted to lose, and just saw how much fun it was winning. And I think that's kind of where it starts. And then as you get older, it's a pretty good skill set to have is to be competitive. And not only did it do me well in my hockey career, but afterwards now in the business world, it's an invaluable asset for sure.
You're certainly competitive. You know, you can see it when you're playing on the ice and off. But like the one thing that I think you see sometimes in, you know, really exceptional athletes is, one, there is humility, but you definitely like to get an edge with your mouth, chirping and getting in guys' heads. That's like a skill set that I think is, you know, part and parcel of, you know, giving you that edge. So yeah, you've, you know, physically and you're a great athlete, but how did you become this chirpy, like, needler, even on the golf course and in the locker room, I'm sure? Like, where's that come from? And is that part of the competitive edge you're trying to get?
I don't know if I'm doing it to get a competitive edge. I just think for me, I'm not as emotionally vested in when I'm chirping as other people. Whereas like somebody could say something to me and it doesn't really bother me because I feel like I'm ultimately focused on what I'm doing, whether it's playing hockey or golfing or whatever it is, right? Even if it's like a bet or a game or something. I feel like some people just don't have the emotional stability to be able to handle something that throws them off. And I've always kind of prided myself on being focused and kind of, you know, the old cliche is mentally tough. I don't know if that's quite accurate anymore, but I feel like I know what my goal is, and it doesn't matter what you say, you can't impact that goal. And I feel like some people can be persuaded or impacted by words. So I more or less just kind of throw things out there, and I'd always kind of consider myself like a witty chirper. I like to throw things out there that the person's going to actually, after they rebuttal to me with probably something that's not intelligent, they're going to go back to the bench or somewhere else and actually think about, what did he mean by that? And that's what I love. That's the stuff that gets into people's head. But I feel like that can't happen. That can't impact me. So that's maybe why I do it so much, to see if there's other people that it affects.
It's a good way to kind of to separate those two things. Like, so it definitely hits some people harder. I've seen it a number of times that you're not concerned with what people think, but knowing you, I don't think that's the case, but it comes off that way. And I guess you're also willing to back it up, which is another whole discussion.
Listen, like, I'll tell you a quick story without naming names, but I'm golfing the other day with this guy. And this guy is, he's a fixture on TV. You know, he's broadcasted in front of millions of people. And he has a putt. We're playing for $5 a hole, like not the big money by any means.
That's because you're cheap.
And he has a putt.
Right?
No, it wasn't my call, but
fair.
Stop interrupting. But he has a 9-foot putt. And I said, all you have to do is 3-putt this for the win. And he had been playing really well to that point. It was just a little mini chirp. And he's like, oh my God, well, what do you mean? And I explained to him, okay, well, all you need to do is get this in 3 putts and you win the hole and you win the money. And he just panicked so much, and he ended up 4-putting it for the loss. And then after, I'm like, how? He goes, I just got so nervous when you said that. I go, but why? Why would you get so nervous? Like, you do something that's a high anxiety job on the air in front of millions of people, and you can't handle 3-putting a 9-foot putt in front of 3 different people. Like, who cares what we think? And he's like, I'm not wired that way. So that just shows you some people aren't wired that way. When they're challenged like that, or you put something out in the open, they just can't handle it. And that's something I've always prided in myself that I could do that.
I actually would think that most people aren't wired that way. You know, I think you spent a lot of your life in a ring with other super competitive people that can also give it and take it. But I would guess, if I were to guess, that most people are probably wired like the guy that 4-putted from 9 feet.
It all comes down to being honest with yourself, I think, too, though. You've known me a long time. I've always been very honest with myself. And that's not just like out in the open, to like when I'm evaluating myself in front of other people, teammates, peers, coaches. I've always been very internally honest with myself. So if I'm not doing a good enough job at something, like, I'm the first one to kind of admit it to myself, and I'll do whatever it takes to correct that. So I don't know. I just feel like being accountable and being honest is kind of like the foundation of everything, because you can never really improve or get better if you're one of those people that's always making excuses for yourself. Oh, well, I didn't get this job because of this. I got a free ride, or,
Right.
I've always kind of been that person where that's a very important habit to me.
On that sort of accountability factor, if we stay on the thread, like, you're definitely willing to back up your words. I think a lot of people have seen that. And there's that legendary story that, is told on every time you're a guest now. It was a secret for a while, but every time you're on a guest now, you tell the story about when you first went up to Manitoba and knocked out a bunch of your teammates to get an edge, pretty much.
That's a little misguided way of explaining it.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll throw it over to you and you can touch on it, but just hearing what you're saying, I always remember you as someone that was for sure, certainly focused. And one thing that, I think is a trait where you see in a lot of successful people is, even if their idea or like vision for themselves seems absurd at the time, they stick to it and end up almost willing themselves to the finish line. And I always got that sense from you that, even when you were younger, you always had a sense that you knew where you were going and where you wanted to end up. You ended up getting there. I'd love to hear your obviously insight on it. And they ever ask me about you, I always say, like, he was a great athlete, obviously, our best defenseman, but like, we played on a team that was middle of the pack at best. And, you'd go out and party or celebrate as a team or whatever after the game. And sometimes you wouldn't go, even though you like doing that stuff, because you would say stuff like, hey man, like, hockey's my life. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to be. And I'm like, well, like, we're middle of the pack. We're not even going to make the playoffs. And this guy's like, so anyway, it just strikes me as very unique. And there's, I've met other people that have had that similar mentality and ended up falling exactly in line with that dream that they had, right? So to me, that's pretty cool and unique. It's a hard thing to articulate to people until you see it.
I think perseverance is very important in life. And, not very few people get that smooth path to where they want to go. So for me, I always thought, okay, like I can persevere, but it takes an opportunity, I think, to get to where you want to go. I think at some point you need an opportunity or you need kind of a little break to go your way. So I always thought in my head, well, I'm going to control the things I can control. Like I'm going to control, if we're talking about hockey, I'm going to control about my fitness. I'm going to control, my attitude. I'm going to control the way I prepare. And when I do get that one opportunity, like I'm going to make the best of it. That's kind of what I always thought. And Darce, don't kid yourself. You were the same way. We took losing really, really hard. So we had a great 4 years in university, and we still talk about this. The one thing that we were missing was the winning. We had some success our first year where we ended up going to the conference finals, and then we didn't quite have any after that. And that wore on us a lot of nights. I remember a lot of nights just sitting in our house afterwards, after a weekend of, we're at Miami, Ohio, or Ohio State, or Michigan State, and coming back from a couple losses. And it's hard to really enjoy yourself when at the end of the day, that's your goal. Your goal is to play hockey for a career. So I don't know. I think passion is an important thing too. Like if you don't have a passion for what you're going to do, you're probably not going to persevere. So I never really looked at it as sacrifice. Like people are always like, oh, you got to sacrifice so much. And I tell it to my son who wants to play hockey for a career. He's still young, right? He's still 12, and I said, you have to sacrifice a lot if you actually want to make it. Like you can't, like he wants to go sleep over at his grandparents tomorrow, but he's got skate early in the morning on Friday. So I'm like, okay, we got to sacrifice, but I never really looked at it as sacrifice. Like this is what I wanted to do. So you have to have a passion. You have to like what you're aspiring to be, I think.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Definitely doesn't feel like a sacrifice if what you want to do is the next day train hard, right? Like you're like, well, okay, I won't go out tonight because it's not going to help me tomorrow. It's not going to feel good either. So to your point, it doesn't really feel like sacrifice.
No.
Tell me a little bit about how Juice became the nickname. Like, I guess I'm somewhat familiar with the story, but I knew you for years before that. And all of a sudden they're calling you Juice. I'm like, who's Juice? I'm like, yeah, he's in pretty good shape. He looks like he could be on juice, to be honest, but I'm guessing that's where it came from. So tell me about that. And then maybe we'll get into your workout regime when you're playing and now.
I think it was a way originally to belittle me. When I left college, we prided ourselves on training hard and working out. And like I said, that's one of the things that I knew I could always control. And then when after our senior year, I went up to Manitoba in the AHL. At the end of the college seasons, you knew like we were pretty depleted and you lose weight during the course of the season. So I think when I went up to Manitoba, it was at the end of our college year, and we went on a little bit of a bender after the season and everything. So I think I was probably like 185 pounds, and then played kind of my time in Manitoba. I was only there for 6 weeks. And then when I came back the following year for training camp, I obviously put in a really good summer of training, and I was back to 200, 205, which is
that your real weight, or is that just the weight that you wanted on the program?
Oh, my heaviest, I was 208 was my heaviest. No, I was always 205 was my number. I put myself in the hospital one year, Darce, getting to 205. I had proteinuria and I had to go to the hospital. I was there for 3 days. My wife's like, you're an idiot. What are you doing? And I go, well, this is the diet and I'm sticking to it. So I stuck to it to the point where I was in the hospital. Anyways, stop interrupting.
You say some ridiculous stuff, so you got to kind of like take it when it's out there, you know?
Well, I make up stuff too. That's the one thing,
There's that, but.
So yeah, I come back to camp the next year. It was 2004 full lockout in the NHL, if you remember. So I don't know why, but before we came to training camp, they had already announced that the whole season was canceled. So everyone comes to the NHL training camp knowing there's not going to be a season. So for me, this is basically the start of my tryout for the AHL, which is going to be probably the best league in the world that year. So I come in 205 and I'm strong and I'm angry and I'm competitive, and it's practice, training camps, and I'm following guys in the corner and finishing my hits and everything, and I'm aggressive. And one of the goalies, who is, a goalie and doesn't really work out or train, starts saying, oh, he's on the juice. And I'm like, okay. Because people didn't really work out like they do now. And people didn't really train all year long that play pro hockey like 15 years ago. It was still kind of, maybe it wasn't considered the cool thing to do, was to work hard and try hard in the off season, but now it is, obviously. So I think it was a way to belittle me. Oh, this guy's on the juice. This guy's, and they laugh at me. Oh, juice. So joke's on them now, isn't it?
You told me the other day that leans in. So that's your new mentality, I guess. Not that you weren't always lean, but I guess you were a little more muscular at one point. But like, what do you do? Because you're like obsessive about working out, not in a negative way, in a great way. But like, what's your routine now?
It's a lifestyle. I think, I don't know. Like I started my own academy 2 years ago now, and I've been doing work with my agent and some of this broadcast. So I'm busy work wise, but I always make it a priority to do some sort of a workout every day. So I don't think I've really missed any days in the last couple of years, maybe like a handful here or there. But for me, it's a lifestyle decision. I feel better when my body feels better, when I'm elevating my heart rate. So every day is different, right? But when I'm in, for instance, I've been in Toronto in a hotel for the majority of the last month. And what I have there is a treadmill. So I do, treadmill sprints every day, or I'll do like a 2-mile run one day. I bring a skipping rope with me. I can do skip workouts. So I'm basically just trying to do, elevate my heart rate. I'm not a guy that isolates muscles and sits there and lifts weights. I like to get kind of a full body workout in at once. So, I'm not sitting in the gym for 2 hours. I can go in the gym for 30 minutes and burn 1,500 calories with a 30-minute workout by not stopping and skipping and doing 4 exercises for 5 sets. So it's just a conscious effort. When I'm in California, where I live for the majority of the year, I run outside a lot. I bike a lot. I have a Peloton. I've always had a gym in every house I've lived in for the last 15 years. So my cottage in Ontario, where I spend the majority of the summer, my whole garage is a gym. It's awesome. Equipment I've had throughout the course of my career. When I'm in California, I have a gym in my garage, and then I have obviously the weather outside if I need to do running and stuff like biking. So it's always been important. I mean, it's been a priority for me to always, feel good and train. And my whole family's that way. We get up every day and everybody does their own things, but everyone's doing some sort of exercise, whether it's yoga or Pilates or swimming or biking or running or workouts. So it's just a lifestyle decision.
Do you ever drag Ron McLean or Brian Burke off the panel into the gym with you?
There's a little bit of an age discrepancy there. But I think Ron does his own things. I think Berkey's. I'm not sure what Berkey does physically, but he's a little bit older than us. He's an intelligent guy though, so I'm sure he does something.
So maybe shift to like life after hockey, just generally. It seems like some guys transition really well. Other people, it's real difficult. Do you think most guys have an idea what they want to do post career? I think one of the things that I think about is really anyone who's playing in the NHL, like, has pursued their passion since they've been a kid, right? Or even any high level, really. And now all of a sudden you can't do that anymore, where most people kind of find their passion along the way. And like, I just watched a Clive Davis Netflix documentary, and he's a, big time music producer. And like, he can do that until he's 90, right? Once he finds his passion, he can keep going. Whereas a hockey player, like, the music kind of stops. The adrenaline that you get when you're with your team, your day-to-day routine, the day-to-day routines, you're competing hard, and all that comes to an end. So, how well prepared do you think guys are to transition generally?
I think guys really struggle with this. I think it's a major issue, and it's something that the union's trying to put a program in place to help out. But for all those reasons you just said, I think it's a routine that you're in since you're a kid, where you don't really have to think a whole lot. All you have to do is just show up, and not just show up, but you know your schedule, your training every summer, you know what to do. If you want to make little tweaks here and there, it's, you're within your comfort level. And then when you're done, sometimes some guys don't have a lot of interests outside of hockey. Some guys don't really know like what to do right off the bat. I'll tell you like what helped me really transition. And I feel like I've transitioned pretty well, where like I almost want to help out more people transition my way. First thing, and it goes back to what I just talked about. First thing I did is I slowly removed myself from the game. So instead of it being just like this abrupt stop, I slowly removed myself. Like, granted, I retired, or I stopped playing on my own terms, but I was still kind of waiting to sign with the team if the right offer came. So I kept in shape. So I think staying in shape and telling myself mentally I could still play if I wanted to. Like even to this day, like it's been a year and a half now since I've had full equipment on for the last time. And I still tell myself, and I don't know if it's right or not, but I still tell myself if I got a call tomorrow, I could get on the ice in 2 weeks and be ready to play. I think that helps you mentally deal with it. If you still believe that you're not so far removed from the game. Second thing that, because I didn't know what I wanted to do afterwards. The second thing that I got some good advice about is I didn't say no to anything. So every opportunity that's come my way in the last year and a half, whether it kind of made me uncomfortable to do or not, I've tried. So I haven't limited myself. So I've tried a lot of different things. I've obviously the TV thing. I've tried commentating in games. I've tried scouting. I've fielded every call. I've been involved in a couple different businesses. So I haven't really limited myself that way. And I think you can start kind of checking things off the box as you try them. So if you try something, you don't like it, there's a couple things I did and I'm like, okay, that's not for me. I don't have a future in that. And that's just a good way to kind of go about it, is you just keep checking things off instead of saying, it's not for me, and not even giving it a try, because some things do surprise you.
Sure.
So that's kind of the two ways that I've coped with the transition, I think.
That's good. That's good advice. Kind of going through a process of elimination as you go, and I'm sure as you get better at things, you probably like them more, I'm guessing, but there's also things where early on you're just like, no, that's not me.
Well, that's why little projects, right? Like I didn't come out of the gates and make a big commitment. Like I've had deals to sign as, regional central scouting director and like things like that for teams where it's like a couple year commitment. And I said, you say thanks, but no thanks. But you think like, I don't want to make a long commitment right off the bat if I'm not sure if I have a passion for it. So I've made little incremental commitments here before I can, truly commit in like the next year or two.
The first instinct or inclination for most people coming out of pro sports is to like stay in the game in a coaching or scouting sort of role. But like, how do they go about solving this problem? Because I also think that some of it is personality driven. Like you're interested in a number of things, you went to business school or whatever, sharp guy. So like maybe you'd engage more than someone that doesn't have that same, not intellectual confidence, but you know what I mean? Like that may say no right away.
Education's a big part of it, Dars. Like guys, the guys that come from major junior, that come from high school and go right to the NHL, that's a tough, like your afterlife, like after hockey, that's a tough road to start on. So I think at some point there has to be more encouragement from either the NHLPA or the player's agent that they have to go to university and finish school. You can do school online right now. I finished my degree online. You could do it from any city in the world. It's not a difficult thing to do, but I honestly think that education is a big part, because you really limit yourself if you don't have a basic undergrad degree, where we all know what college is, right? Like you don't retain most of the stuff that you learn in college. It's all about like the process, learning how to learn, learning how to be structured, learning how to follow a schedule, learning how to multitask. And a lot of these kids that play pro hockey and now the career expectancy is shorter and shorter. Like guys are retiring at 32 now. 32 years old with no skill set at all besides being able to play hockey. Yeah, if you don't get involved in hockey afterwards, like you're in trouble. I think there has to be more of an onus of education. And I know the union's starting to kind of realize this. And, it was before in the 80s and 90s, alcohol was a big problem. So a lot of players would, turn to alcohol after they were done. And there was a lot of issues there. And now it's not so much alcohol or drugs. It's just, guys are just, they don't know what to do. It's more like depression and anxiety and mental illness that's a result of this. So it's definitely something that I think education could help out.
I guess it's, I don't want to, hammer this point too much longer, but I guess part of it too is like when you're playing and that's all you want to do, all you've wanted to do you really want to focus on something else while you're playing?
No.
Like you just want to be super focused on, rest, eating well, playing hockey and not,
yeah.
I don't know that that's the case for most people, but I even had that sense a little bit, right? When you're post college or whatever. So I'm sure guys just want to focus now and I'll deal with that later.
I was the same way, right? You're in your own world when you're playing, you're in your routine. And when you have a family as well, throw that into the mix. because you're traveling so much. And then when you're home, all you want to do is just be around your wife and kids. And you're like, okay, forget about, I don't need another worry. But there is so much time. Looking back, there's so much time on the road. There's just, with all the road trips, and you're sitting in your hotel, and the first bus for practices never leaves before 9:30. So you can go to bed at 11 p.m. and get up at 8, get your 9 hours sleep, which is way more than enough, and still have time, to log in and do an hour of work. And then you have time in the afternoon. There's just so much time on the road that guys are on Netflix and playing video games and, playing fantasy sports. So it comes down to like, yeah, do you want to just be focused on your trade in hockey and just let your mind wander when you're not playing hockey? Or do you want to prepare yourself for retirement so you don't fall in this rut when you're in your mid 30s? So I couldn't do it. Like, I didn't want to take classes when I played. So it's a lot harder, than I'm making it out to be, but that's just kind of how I feel.
So what are the things you're doing with your time today? I know you're become a bit of more of a public figure broadcasting, but what else are you sort of tackling in these incremental yeses that you've been making?
Well, I started an academy I just mentioned last year, so I have another full year commitment to that, and then probably next year as well. So that's something where it's the first hockey academy in Southern California where hockey's still kind of getting going. So proud of that, because we have some really good kids that will be probably drafted into the WHL in the next year or 2 years, because we got some 2006s. So that's more of a giving back, I think, to the game kind of thing. Like, there's a little bit of money in it, but I don't think my partner and I are really exploiting these families like some of the people do in Toronto. But that's more of a giving back and kind of feeling good about what hockey's done for me, and trying to teach these kids, what I not only the on ice stuff, but the off ice. Like, I'm around these kids all day at the academy, so kind of just lead by example, the way to carry yourself and treat other people. Still doing work for my agent, Kurt Overhart, KO Sports, and what I do is I mentor his top defense prospects, so his top guys in the AHL, NHL, the guys that are on the border, the fringe, and they kind of just need that extra guidance and maybe somebody who's not too far removed from the game to bounce some ideas off of, and feelings and things like that. So I'll travel around and see each of the top guys play once or twice a year, and then take them out for dinner and kind of just create a dialogue with them. The broadcasting thing is something that I've tried right off the bat. And this is something I didn't really want to get into. I wasn't a huge media fan when I played.
You've got the after hours during your career got people hooked. They're like, this guy's he's a prospect. It's your personality's good for it.
I did so much media through my career, and I always begrudged, but it's more the writers. The writers are the ones I don't trust, the print guys, because you create your own context when you're on camera, and people they understand the context of what you're saying, but when you do an article and it's written on print, they can shape the narrative very quickly. And I've been burned a couple times, so I don't really quite trust the print guys, but I like the camera. So it's something, again, my agent pushed me right off the bat. He's like, you're going to do this game in Edmonton versus LA in LA. This was like 2 years ago when I first got back from the Spengler Cup in Switzerland, which was my last pro game. And he goes, you're going to go do this game, and even if you do go play for the rest of the season, I just want you to have this experience. So I started with that game, and then it kind of just snowballed from there. And then I ended up doing the All-Star game like a month later, and kind of enjoyed it, but still kind of, nervous about an ex-player, a guy who wasn't even retired yet, going to the All-Star game and kind of on the bench with a headset hanging out, thinking everyone else is probably thinking in their heads, what's this loser doing on the bench, right? Like, get out of here, old man. Like, I was worried about that, but I'm like, I'm just going to give it a try. And if I don't like it, I'll never have to do it again. And next thing you know, I'm in St. Louis last year at that All-Star game. I'll probably be in Sunrise, Florida this year for another All-Star game. And I always bring my son with me. So
that's pretty cool.
When I've been kind of getting, diving into these projects, a big priority for me has been being flexible so I can still be around my kids, because they're still at a good age where, I probably only have like 5-6 years left before they go off to college and they're doing their thing. So being around the kids on a week-to-week basis is important for me as well.
That's great. So like agency, academy, broadcasting. So on the agency, like how important is it for a kid to have a good agent? Because I feel like your relationship with your agent's been instrumental throughout your career and now sounds like post-career.
It turned into a friendship, and it's very important, I think. And their agents are recruiting kids at a young age now, which is tough.
Super young.
They're not proud of it, but that's just the way that the NHL is trending. How there's so many more players playing at 18 years old now. So you almost have to get these kids at 13, 14 and develop a relationship with them and a trust. But there's just so much to know that's impossible for these young kids and parents to do on their own, I think. With training, when you link up with an agent, usually they have their connections with training, they have their connections with doctors and rehab, they have their connections with camps and ice times, and there's just a lot that goes into it, that if you have a good agent that you really trust and has your back, they can help you so much. And then if you do make it pro, there's a lot, there's disability insurance, there's life insurance, there's accountants, there's financial advisors. Those, in my experience, you get hit from every different angle once you make it to the NHL, and it's hard for you to really distinguish like who can I trust out of these people, because you hear so many horror stories. Like there's a guy in the NHL who trusted his parents to invest his money and they bankrupt them. And now he's doesn't talk to his parents anymore, and luckily he signed a new deal where he can make some more money. But it's really hard to know, especially like if we're going back to talking about these kids that come from the CHL that have no education. Who do you trust, right? Like everyone's a nice person to you and everyone's persuasive. So you need an agent who really has your back and somebody who can really trust and help you make these tough decisions. And I always had that.
You're now kind of working hand in hand with them. You're saying you're managing their top D. How many top D would you be seeing play once or twice? 6, 10?
No, not that many. He's a little bit more selective. So he would be considered more like a boutique agency, which is, has the appeal of everything I just mentioned, right? Having that one-on-one and having somebody who really cares about you and helps you through everything. So like one of the kids I'll tell you is Adam Foote's son. Adam Foote's, for those who don't know, is the Hall of Fame defenseman, played forever. He's from Whitby. He has 2 sons drafted in the first round at Tampa Bay. One's a defenseman, one's a forward. And that just shows you like you can only coach your son or teach your son so much, right? Before he kind of tunes you out. So they had me go and watch him this year in Syracuse, and took him out for dinner and a couple of drinks after. And then afterwards, I wrote up a report of what I saw in his game, a pretty detailed report of his one game that I saw. I mean, and I talked to the Tampa Bay general manager at the game and everything, and maybe offended him a little, but that's a funny story too. I don't even know if I told you that one, Darce. I saw him and he said, yeah, like, what do you think? And I go, yeah, he's playing a good game. He's a little bit cautious. Like, is there any reason why your defensemen all go in defensive zone face-offs? They all just flip and go high and hard off the glass. And he goes, oh, that's kind of how we play. And I go, well, shouldn't the American affiliate play the same way as the big club? Like, and he goes, yeah. And I go, so you're telling me Victor Hedman just gets the puck and shoots it off the glass every time he has an D-zone face-off? And he goes, no. And I go, well, so why do you let them make some different plays? There's a variety of face-off plays you could run. He goes, and he just kind of stared at me like, calling me out. I just met this guy. So anyways,
yeah, that
so I went and watched
that's
him.
the stuff that we talked about earlier on, that exact thing. Just random. You know what, man? I think you should probably do this. I know you don't know me, but
I wrote a report up and Adam Foote read it and he's like, wow, like I've never really seen it from this perspective. So it was good to kind of, give him a glimpse of what his son's game looks like from my eyes. And that goes back to being honest with yourself again. If you really want to get better, you have to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And then you can make your adjustments or your improvements. So he's one kid who's got a bright future.
I guess his other kid's he's the guy with the absolute rifle shot on Team Canada this year, no?
Yes. Yeah. His other one's a forward and he's a winger. And so the thing that separates them is the mental, I think, not mental toughness, but one is a great, like they're both great kids, but one's very like calm demeanor and he's competitive, but he's not like a dog on a bone. And the forward's a dog on a bone. Like this kid's tough. This kid wants to like rip your face off. Like he has that, perseverance and that, competitive, never give up. And the other one's just he's a big, strong kid and he's competitive, but he's not like a rip your face off kind of competitive, which is maybe not the right way to explain it. But in the hockey world, that's how I would explain
Yeah, it's an interesting visual, but I think people get it. How are kids, in your view, these are Adam Foote's kids, so they've got some pretty good lineage and probably good advice and coaching, but how are kids generally, even down to your son's age, I guess at the academy level, like how are their mentalities different? And, you hear a lot about like, oh, kids are so entitled, but like how is it different than maybe call it 20 years ago?
It's very different. I think everybody is a lot more concerned about them. The whole team aspect, the whole being a part of a team where you just kind of, keep your mouth shut, stay in your lane kind of thing. Like we grew up, I've never heard so many kids and so many parents. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great kids. A lot of the kids in my academy are great kids, like very coachable, very respectful. But there's this notion that if I'm not getting my ice time or I'm getting shortchanged, like I'm just going to tell you, or my parents are going to tell you. Like that's just different for me. I've never heard so many forwards. I coached a AAA team this year as well, the Junior Ducks. I've never heard so many forwards' parents complaining about who their kids are playing with or what line they're on. To me, like that's just so foreign. I never even did that in the NHL. I would never even think about complaining about my ice time or who I was playing with to anyone, let alone like to myself. And there's only 3 lines. We're like, what are you talking about? We have 3 lines. Like everyone plays with everybody. There's not even really a first, second, third line. We roll 3 lines. Like if anyone's getting more ice time, it's by like a minute, 2 minutes a game. It's so foreign to me, but that's just the culture now, right? And they're not bad kids or bad parents, but that's just the culture of the world. I might even say now is what's my son getting? Like, how is my son measure up? Why is he not playing here? What does he have to do to get more ice time? So like there's a lot more communication, I'm sure, with parents now than there was when you and I were playing minor hockey.
It seems that way. In some ways it's too bad, but I guess it is what it is. What's your view on, and then we'll talk a little bit about commentating, what's your view on like how much kids play at a pretty early age, and then the approach around specialization early on versus being a multi-sport athlete? Like when should or shouldn't that kick in?
That's hard to say an exact age. I know there's a science to it, or people think there's a science to what age they should specialize. I think being a multi-sport athlete's huge, though. Like I said, I played every sport. I played every organized. I played baseball organized, soccer a bunch. Even I played in some golf tournaments. I played everything organized. Football, I played 2 years in high school. I played everything organized basically except for basketball. You learn so many different skills in every different sport. And it's a shame that kids that just specialize in hockey early. I think like at my son's age now at 12, 13, which is first year Bantam, I think you definitely have to start specializing a little bit more. But there's a lot of hours in the day in the summer. This has been a little bit different, obviously, with COVID, but usually he's not on the ice after June, usually like maybe a tournament early June. He's not on the ice at all for the rest of June and all of July. A whole month off. Don't even worry about him skating. And then he starts going again in August. So there's a lot of time there to still play sports. Golf is great for hand-eye, complements hockey very well. We play basketball and tennis almost every day at our cottage. You have to continue to play different sports, but you do have to probably train year-round now with hockey when you get to about 13, 14 years old. At least being on the ice in the summertime for once a week through those dry months, I think, just because you fall so far behind.
Mm-hmm. So Sportsnet, I didn't watch when Cup debut or playoffs debut, and I got a text and a couple comments on your suits, ties, and hair. So who decides the suits that you wear?
I do. They're all my suits. I'm contracted out right now, so I'm not. I think they advertise Jack Victor does all the suits, outfits all the people on there, but I'm not. I'm an exception. So they're my suits, they're my ties. I cut my own hair, but so what? It's COVID.
That is just incredible.
I like to know who all these supermodels are that are critiquing me. Like, I'm good. I'm confident in my suits. I'm really confident in my ties. I don't really care about my hair. Like, clearly, do you think a guy who cuts his own hair and then goes on TV cares about what people think about it?
My answer to that would be no. I don't think you care that much if you cut your own hair and go on TV, national television.
And my suits are amazing too, by the way. I don't even want to tell people who makes them because I don't want people to copy me. And that's honest. My shirts and my suits are phenomenal.
I don't know about borrowing your son's ties, but your suits and
my ties are amazing. I've actually gotten compliments on my tie game.
So now
we can't all wear wait, Darcy, we can't all wear Lacoste golf shirts collar up still. They won't let me wear that on air.
It's to protect my neck from the sun.
Yeah, it must be.
So yeah, you've become quite a figure doing what you're doing, and you're enough compliments throughout this whole dialogue. But you're quite good at it, and I know a lot of people comment in a positive way because I think you bring a fresh, unique perspective and personality. Do you think it's something that you would be into pursuing long term?
I never thought it would be, but I'm enjoying this playoff run because it's almost like baptism by fire. I went from doing like one game every 2 weeks or whatever, flying in from LA to Toronto to do the Saturday night Hockey Night in Canada games, to doing, I've worked, how many games I've played? It's the 26th. There's been 26 days of playoffs, and I've worked probably 22 of them. So I've worked a lot now, and I've done a lot of them, and I still enjoy the analysis because I feel like I don't think I would enjoy the color commentating as much, like being at the game and kind of just, throwing in my 2 cents as a play-by-play guy describes what's happening on the ice. I think the panel and being an analyst is suits me because I can watch the period. I can cut out clips that, illustrate my point, and I can make good points that actually educate people. So Elliot Friedman told me when I started, he goes, I try for every show I'm on, I try to tell the people 2 things that they didn't know before. So I kind of went along that line, and I watched Tony Romo, who I'm a huge fan of. I love watching a football game that Tony Romo calls, even though he's the color guy that I just said I didn't want to be, because he watches the game live and he reacts to what's happening. So he'll say, oh, look at this formation. That means, the safety is creeping down into the box. This is going to be a slant across the middle. And then boom, it happens. And you're like, wow, that's so cool to have somebody who can read what's happening on the field and educate the fans. So I kind of take that same approach where, yeah, like I can be funny and stupid and make you laugh, but I also try to couple that with actually teaching you something about the game that isn't common knowledge that I've learned through my 30 years of playing competitive hockey and my 15 years of playing pro hockey and actually listening to coaches and absorbing everything that they've taught me. So it's fun to share that stuff to people. I love when people say, well, I've been watching hockey for 30 years and I didn't know that on the, when a guy's set up behind the net, a defenseman's posted up to each post and you're trying to flush him out to his backhand. Like that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I love teaching people things that they've never heard before.
Yeah, no, that part's great. And you're right. Like Tony Romo was a great example because you're basically getting in the mind of a Hall of Fame quarterback, right? And that's pretty close to the game still. So the insights he can bring, are just totally unique to, even if you were a coach your whole life or a commentator. Like I think sometimes, and I'd probably been guilty of this historically, people knock like an Elliot Friedman. I'm not saying it's him, I'm just using him as an example, that, he didn't play. Can he really know? And through talking to you sort of, in prep for this, one of the things I think that maybe shocked you is how much they do know and then how hard these guys work. So, the fact that you bring a different perspective, like it is a perspective that probably only you or someone that's played, a dozen years in the NHL can bring. But like a guy like Elliot Friedman or some of these guys that haven't played also bring a really unique perspective and are really good at it.
Yeah, he'll always fight that stereotype though. I think a lot of guys that didn't play will kind of have that, but you got to remember, they have a passion for the game as high as anybody, and they know the game very, very well. He's still eager to learn. He loves, when we're watching games, he loves to ask myself or Brian Burke or Anthony Stewart or Colby Armstrong or even Cassie Campbell, like, why is that happening right there? Like, tell me why that play is developing that way. So he's constantly trying to learn, and his greatest strength is just his communication skills, and he's made a lot of relationships, and he's very, very trusting and very, very loyal, and people trust him and he has so much information. Every time I go there and I'm sitting in studio with him, I'm learning so many different things about what's going on. This ownership's looking for a new coach, or he's got all the inside information, and that's because he's a loyal, genuine guy and people trust him. And I trusted him as a player too. If I ever needed something, I didn't really need messages out to the media because I just basically say it myself. But he was a guy that I could trust, and if I needed to bounce something off of, I would. So that's why he's so successful, and that's why he'll always be successful.
Yeah, it's interesting how players kind of, there's that communication or trust only in certain media members. Like that whole, I didn't even realize it until, talking to guys that are longtime NHL vets, just like how stuff gets out, who they talk to, who they don't, and then how agents are somewhat connected as well. And it's, that part's quite interesting. It's good to hear that about Friedman. So rumor has it though, is that you're being groomed as the next Don Cherry. Is there anything to that?
No, I think I'm going to kind of have my own path. But for me, like Don Cherry, yes. Don Cherry is no longer working on Hockey Night in Canada, but he's still a staple to me. Like, I grew up watching him, and some of his views are a little bit dated for sure, like any other 85-year-old person, right? And he's offended a lot of people. But I still hold him in high regard, and I think he's done a lot for hockey and Canadian hockey for sure. So I would never think that I could replace him. And think about all the things he's taught people over the years as well. Like I know he's went on a lot of rants and stuff, but just the little things like move your stick out of the lane when the guy's shooting the puck and there's no threat in front of them. Well, I kind of modified that, but he used to say, move your stick out of the lane and don't deflect pucks on your goalie. Like there's been a lot of good messages. Don't hit people from behind. He was one of the first big figures on not hitting from behind. And now in Canada, they have like the stop signs on the jerseys. He was big on that. Like he taught so many people so many things for so long. I would never want to replace him. He's irreplaceable in my opinion. I don't know. Like he had a pretty cool job for a long time. And if people can think about me the same way as him, like I teach them something and I entertain them. Like he was a polarizing guy too. The way he spoke, how, the hand gestures and everything, like how like riled up he would get when he really believed in a point, how he would call out certain people when he was upset with them. That was entertaining for me to watch. So I would never want to replace him.
Just lob that one in there. But I think you're right. The entertainment value, like he was entertaining. He brought a lot of value to people and he was super passionate, right? And those three things will go a long way. Yeah, he's a legend for sure. So let's talk about hockey real quickly, and then we can wind it up, your hockey days. So like when you think back about, your time playing, you guys went on some great runs. Like what are the memories that stand out to you?
The 2011 run for sure stands out to me, going to the Stanley Cup Finals Game 7, just that whole 2 months and all the excitement in Vancouver and the hundreds of thousands of people on the streets every night while we were playing, watching on the big screen at the CBC building, the feeling of getting so close to my childhood dream and, not attaining it. So, and being able to cope with that and deal with that after. Early in my career, I think just the excitement of kind of playing in the NHL and playing with some of the guys that I looked up to and watched on TV for years. My first playoff game was a quadruple overtime game. I still remember the way I felt after that game. Representing my country a couple times, the one time in 2014, and I was named captain, which was one of the most, the most pride I've ever felt being a hockey player is when I was chosen amongst all those great players to be the captain of my country. Those are kind of some of the things that stick out to me.
We're in the sea for Canada. That's pretty incredible. One of my favorite questions, you like to needle me on it, is who are some of the best players that you played against? Who stands out?
When I answer that, it's difficult because I think about back to the start of my career, and a lot of people now don't really remember how good Mike Modano was, or Marian Gaborik, or Jerome McGinley. Obviously, it was a first ballot Hall of Famer, so people are probably familiar with him. Matt Sundin was amazing. I played with and against him. Those are some guys that were really difficult to play against back in the day. Getzlaf and Perry have been a force for so long. And then I still had the pleasure of playing against McDavid and McKinnon, played with and against McKinnon. He's a special player. He's probably the best player in the world right now.
Yeah,
McKinnon, Jack Eichel has always been a sleeper for me. I think he's a great player. I know he doesn't get a lot of attention being in Buffalo, and their teams are pretty brutal for the most part, but he's a special player too. defenseman wise, like Brett Burns, I've seen the evolution of Brett Burns from when he was a forward in Minnesota and pretty ineffective as like a third, fourth line forward to being one of the top defensemen in the league for the last 5-6 years. He's a pretty impressive player too. I've seen Drew Doughty from the beginning of his career, and again, doesn't get a ton of attention in LA, but he's been a great player for a decade. So those are some of the guys that stick out. Oh, Datsuk was amazing. He's another guy, maybe not as appreciated, him and Zetterberg, for what they did in Detroit, but Datsuk he was so fun to play against, just because when I wasn't on the ice against him, I could just watch him from the bench, and he was always doing something cool. He was almost like Pettersson's a little bit like that in Vancouver now, but Datsuk was way better defensively and even more creative than Pettersson is. It was just so fun to play against and watch when I wasn't on the ice against him.
It's a good comparison, Pettersson and Datsuk. I've heard Datsuk's like, he's kind of a wiry guy, but like super creative, obviously, and the hands are unbelievable. He's on the all hands team, but also like very strong on his stick and very strong on the puck.
Well, he's hard to, I don't know how much he weighed when he played. I think he probably weighed like 190 pounds. And you know what? That's the same weight that the Twins, Henrik and Daniel, were both about 185 to 190 on purpose. They probably could have been over 200 naturally. But Datsuk was so strong on his feet. Like, I remember only like all the shifts and all the games I played against him, I only probably knocked him over once or twice. I remember once for sure in Joe Louis Arena when he tried to, I kind of just timed his cutback and just put him on his butt. But maybe once or twice. And you know me, I'm taking runs at him every shift. So strong on his feet. Mm-hmm. So that was impressive because he wasn't a big guy. He was just, his balance was unbelievable.
Well, it's been a cool journey to watch. Appreciate you offering so many neat insights on, various things, and now your career post hockey seems to be taking off. Can't thank you enough for your time, and wish you the best of luck, and hope to see you in and around Toronto more often. Maybe we can connect on the golf course and I can take you to you as usual.
You can lose some more money to me? Yeah, that sounds good.
I would have buried the 9-footer. Anyway, man, awesome interview. Thanks so much for your time, and good luck with everything, and we'll be in touch, I'm sure.
Okay, Darce. Great catching up, buddy. Thanks for having me.
Take care. Your time is valuable, so thanks for joining us for this episode of Venture and Gains, where we connect great people, ideas, and opportunities. It's this idea of net weaving versus networking. Remember that you can find more episodes at ventureandgains.com, and if you know any entrepreneurs, emerging asset managers, or fascinating people that you think would be a good fit, flip us a note and let us know. Stay well.
Darcy McConvey is a director of private capital markets at Greybrook Realty Partners and is registered under Greybrook Securities, Inc. The opinions and statements expressed by Darcy and the Venture and Gains guests are their own, and they do not reflect the opinions of Greybrook Realty Partners or Greybrook Securities. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. This 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 for investment decisions.